Inspired Writers presents. I am Tracy S. Phillips, and I am talking today with Melissa Westemeier. Melissa Westemeier grew up on the edge of nerd culture, but marriage and three sons immersed her in it. She is fluent in Marvel, DC, Doctor Who, Star Wars, Godzilla, and more, thanks to her family's influence. Her new series features A.J. Lewis, a Gen Z detective with an Xbox and a comic book collection, and Sister Bernadette Olson, who is a retired nun who taught middle school English. This unlikely pair bridges the generation gap while solving mysteries in the witty, none the wiser mysteries. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you, Tracy.
This is so great to talk to you in person. We did some book events together this year, and it was so great to hear you talk about your books. And now it's wonderful to be able to really get the word out there about this series because it's so cute and really very funny.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So we're talking about this one, Drop Like a Bad Habit, which is the second book in the series.
Yes.
And these are fantastic characters. And like I'm not usually a cozy mystery gal because I really like the dark thriller and stuff.
Mhm.
But but this book made me laugh out loud. I mean, several times.
I
Um,
love hearing that.
yeah. AJ is a modern, like video game loving dude, obviously. And he is detective. I really like how you have like a detective and the amateur sleuth in your books. And that's kind of an unusual combination because usually we have um, one or the other in
Mhm.
mystery. So what made you decide to do that?
So the impetus for this entire series came from the woman. She's a writing partner of mine for many, many years. Her name is Mariana Damon, and several years ago, she was diagnosed with vascular dementia. And when another writing partner and I went to go visit her in Portland, Oregon, a few years ago, while she was still able to remember us and visit with us and everything, she told us that she wanted to work on an idea for a murder mystery. And she had this idea about a retired nun finding a body in this refurbished monastery that she lived in, which is now senior apartments. And she wanted the detective to be like the guy from Endeavor, if you're familiar with Masterpiece Mystery. And Endeavor is a very classic mid-century British detective, a little foppish, right? You know, he sings in a choir, plays crossword puzzles, he has an ale in a pub, and that's sort of like her dream man, right? And so she's like, I'm gonna have, the amateur sleuth and the be the nun, and then this detective is a former student of hers. And so when we left her, we had written down all these ideas for the story, and the story was supposed to be called Murder at the Abbey, very on the nose. And when Marnie, my other friend, and I were getting ready to fly home, I said, this is such a cute idea for a story, but she'll never write it because of her condition. So let's write it for her. Let's write it and see if we can't get it published with her name on it. And so that's actually where the Old Habits, book one, Old Habits Die Hard, comes from Mariana's ideas. And then when I went to go sell the series, I learned that no one would publish a standalone cozy. It had to be a series. It couldn't be a standalone. So I had to come up with two more book ideas. So drop like a bad habit. And you talk about painting yourself in a corner, because I don't think an amateur sleuth and a detective work well in a series together if the amateur sleuth doesn't have a plausible reason to be involved in the investigation. And that's why a lot of times in this genre, you'll find the amateur sleuth is like a journalist, for example, or a former detective, or they have some kind of reason to be keen on a lot of crimes. Sometimes they'll be in medical field where they like have that medical background and can identify, ooh, that person was killed. That now I've got a retired nun who taught middle school English. I'm like, oh, for the love of God. Like, it made sense that she discovered one body in her place of residence. But beyond that, how do I pull her and AJ together for consecutive stories? That was a real challenge. Um, so the first book was Mariana's idea that I fleshed out considerably and made some updates and changes to, which I think we're going to talk about shortly with some of your other questions. But yeah, the dragging Bernie into more crimes with AJ, he's always going to show up because he's a detective. But dragging
Right.
Bernie in, that was a different deal. And I couldn't keep killing people off at the Abbey because it's kind of like Midsummer Murders. Like it's a great show, but everybody's like, "Come on, the town is not that big. You can't have that many dead people like every week dying. Nobody would move there after a while. There'd be bigger investigations taking place." So I have to have a level of plausibility in everything I write. It's just the logic in me. So book two had to like branch out into the neighborhood, and it's still people that Bernie knows, and she gets involved because she feels very passionate about justice and what is right and what is fair, and she's also super nosy and likes to get to the bottom of things, and so that's what kind of compels her. But obviously in book one she's compelled because this is a neighbor who's been killed, and she's very concerned about the safety of her building and the safety of everybody living there, and also curious to know, hey, should we be worried? Is it one of us who committed this terrible crime?
Right. So, let's talk about AJ first. I mean, both the characters are great, and I imagine pulling them together is just hard.
But it's also so much fun because they're so different, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you have like a 28-year-old detective who, grew up in a modern age. So I had to update him from Endeavor, right? I had to just break that mold
Yeah.
entirely. So sorry, Mariana. That was one of many changes I made, and that was a major change. But I just felt like for this to have, I wanted to represent a younger voice in the
Right.
cozy genre. And so I'm looking at my own children, and I used to teach high school English. So I have a pretty fair background in kids these days, right? And so I'm like, well, what do boys or young men this age do? What are they interested in? And I looked no further than your own backyard for inspiration. They all play video games to a man. That is one of their primary social outlets is to get online after a day of work or classes and, jump on a game of Call of Duty or Minecraft or whatever. And, they've got their headsets on and they're talking, they're having these conversations with people, they just happen to be off site,
Yeah.
and and you know they do these, they're still up on all of the latest Marvel movies and Star Wars installations and that kind of thing. So I'm like, all right, let's have our man AJ be that guy. He's just going to be a detective, and his hobbies are not crossword puzzles, but they are video games
Right.
and
Well, and I
superheroes.
imagine you've seen all of those movies too, because
Absolutely.
raising three boys, it'd be hard to avoid them.
Write what you know, yes. And so I'm like, okay, this guy, he is my offspring, like raised in the world of the Marvel universe, Doctor Who, Godzilla movies, all of it. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
Was
Yeah.
he is he an amalgam of somebody you know, or is he was he inspired by a single person?
He's definitely based on my oldest son. So my oldest son, Travis, is a little younger than AJ, just to be fair, but I got his looks just like AJ. So AJ's tall and skinny, just like all three of my sons are tall and skinny, but Travis has like beautiful, thick brown hair and gorgeous almond shaped eyes and super long eyelashes. And I'm like, okay, we're going to make AJ attractive but not in a chiseled jaw, broad shouldered kind of way, but in a, like in a competent kind of way. And Travis, he works really, really hard and he's pretty independent, but he also, has all these hobbies that he pursues in his free time and spends a lot of his free time like checking out comic books and watching, Marvel movies and things on Disney Plus and playing video games. And he gets so excited for like the latest installment of Fallout, for example. And I'm like, okay, AJ's going to be like this guy. So yeah, he goes out and has beers and he'll with his friends, or he'll go listen to some live music at a bar in the neighborhood with coworkers, with friends. But he also jumps online with his old college roommates, and plays some video games and connects with like a broader world through that avenue. And I think that's not unique for my son. Um,
No.
or most people that age, that just that's who they are. So yeah, but I'm mainly based AJ off of him. And also my oldest is very logical and straightforward and but also incredibly patient. And that's how I try to portray AJ, especially as he's dealing with an 80-year-old meddling retired nun who wants to call the shots in his own investigation. And so I have him be very respectful, but also show, hey, this guy sometimes loses his patience with her, and he does have to bite his tongue a lot and figure out how to outsmart her in some ways, but not be, I love to develop the relationship as over the course of the books, they grow closer. And usually, when you have an immature sleuth and a detective, they become a love interest for one another, or they become best friends, kind of like you see in Grantchester, right? But
Yeah.
these two, obviously they will never be best friends, nor will they ever be romantically involved for so many reasons, and
But
also
yeah, for
super
sure.
weird. Yeah, I mean, she's a nun, but also she's 80. But
Yeah.
I want them to develop a deep affection and loyalty in this
Respect.
friendship with each other. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I can see that. And I can see it happening too. Um, so his perfect counterpoint or opposite is Sister Bernadette, and they
Yes.
call her, she's called Bernie.
Yes.
She's very curious and likes to get involved with her people at the retirement community and
Yes.
with the murders.
She
So tell
feels
us,
responsible for the world around her.
okay.
You can, as a former teacher, I know you have to be a little bossy, right? And
Mhm.
she is a former middle school teacher, and she taught in the Abbey Senior Living. This is where she spent her career, and then she moved away after retirement. And when she came back to Eugene, Oregon, it's been refurbished. The parish closed down and it's been refurbished into senior apartments. So she's not in her old classroom, but it's her old building. She knows it better than anyone. She has all the history there. She has the history with the people in the neighborhood and the families there. And so when she moves back in, she immediately takes charge and she decides she's going to be the building manager's second in command. And so if they go on a field trip, she's going to make sure everybody gets off the bus okay. And if a murderer goes down or if a body's found on the second floor, why, by golly, she's going to offer assistance and make sure, she knows what's happening and will try to help. And she knows all the good eavesdropping spots, of course, because she's very familiar with the building before and after its refurbishment. So she can sneak into closets and stand by vents and get the skinny. And she's shameless. She will justify anything in the name of what is holy in her mind, right?
Right. I love it. Um, now you say she was a character that was sort of developed by your friend.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mariana had a very clear picture in her head that Sister Bernadette Olson would be a retired nun, former middle school English teacher. Because we were like, well, how does she and AJ know each other? And she's like, oh, well, he was her student. I'm like, easy peasy, that works.
I love it. And it
Yeah,
did. It
yeah,
it totally works,
yes.
obviously. So
They have
he's
a little bit of history. Yeah.
yeah. Um, so in this second book in your series,
Yes.
Dropped Like a Bad Habit, there are a couple murders.
Yes. I got a little carried away in book two, killing people off.
Yeah. Wow.
I know. It just shouldn't let me loose like that.
The first guy is a man named Ethan Brecht, who
Yes.
curiously he calls 911 to report his own death.
Yeah. Like a weird little locked room mystery in a way, right? Because he dies. He's a pharmacist.
Mhm.
He owns the pharmacy block down from where the abbey is located, and he calls 911 for help because he's having some kind of medical emergency. And by the time they show up, he is dead on the floor. And the building is locked. It's closed for the night. He's working late. The security camera shows him making the 911 call. It shows him visibly choking and falling to the floor. And it's like, well, no one was in the room with him. What was he doing? And so immediately the mystery becomes more than just how did he die, but like what caused this in such a clean um, and unpopulated environment. So it's
Right.
like a mini locked room mystery how this is able to happen to him. I had a lot of fun researching how that might happen. And one avenue I actually went down was, could somebody die of, like, if you died of a not a food poisoning, but like an allergic reaction, because it does look like that initially.
Anaphylaxis.
Yeah, and I did learn that if you die of a shock like that, an autopsy will not turn it up. The only
Mm.
way they would know you died that way is if they saw, oh, this person was allergic to peanuts, and then they did like an autopsy and found peanuts in your stomach. That's the only way they'd make that connection. Otherwise, there's no sign that that's what killed you. I thought that was really interesting.
Huh. Really? Yeah, definitely. Um, and so then there's a second death, and I guess I was really kind of bummed that Otis, aka Crazy O,
Crazy. Oh, yeah.
died. I mean, the biker dude, he was pretty kind. Everybody was terrified of him, probably because of
Yes.
his clothing, and he owned a tattoo parlor.
Yeah. A rowdy guy. I mean, his place is buzzing late at night. You know, he gets a lot of noise complaints, a lot of motorcycles showing up, a lot of loud music, kind of a wild crowd. The people on the block, the business owners, some of the apartment dwellers aren't big fans, but he's not a mean person. You know,
Right.
there's definitely drug activity. There's definitely some unsavory behavior taking place at his parlor, but he is never, and that's the thing. I think you can have a rough character who's not necessarily a mean character.
Oh, for
And
sure.
yeah, and so I wanted to, but of course his reputation precedes him and his image precedes him. So a lot of people are judging him without necessarily knowing him.
Yeah, definitely. And what ties this and a third death
Yes.
together, death, murder, um, she, uh, is this whole like real estate development going on.
Right. So we have three people die and it seems unconnected. You know, they
Yeah.
just happen to live within a 2 block area. But what makes it very suspicious, especially to AJ, who doesn't believe in coincidences, is there is a developer trying to buy up the 1 block of Chestnut Street down from the Abbey. Um, and you see this happening in cities all over, including
Yeah.
Eugene, Oregon, but also in places like Madison and Milwaukee, and even Appleton, Wisconsin. A developer will come in and they will buy up an entire city block and they will raise it and then they will build like luxury condominiums on top of like commercial property or business
Right.
property, right? And that has a definite impact on a community. Um, and that is one of the reasons why P- they're a little suspicious about Ethan's death because Ethan was one of the loudest voices against this development taking place. He really believed in keeping the neighborhood out of the hands of big developers and keeping it for the people who live in that community. He's like, these are local shops. And this is the thing about that sort of economic development is when you tear down these little mom and pop businesses, they can't put it on hold for a year until a new building is built and then they
Right.
move into it and open up shop again.
No, it's an
Nobody
entire
has that.
year of lost income and
Exactly. It's not even tenable. And
yeah.
also, you change the dynamic of who's living in that neighborhood. Well, they may not shop at your store anyway, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's a reason you don't get a Starbucks in every neighborhood. Not everybody can afford to go to Starbucks, right?
Right.
Or alternately, maybe kind of a rundown flower shop isn't going to make it in a real chi upscale community because they're used to a different sort of level of service or a different
Right.
type of inventory. So this development has implications for the business owners on that block. And that makes Ethan one of the loudest voices because he's a business owner and he owns his property there. Not everyone on the block owns their property. And this does raise suspicions. Well, was it a fellow business owner who did want the property development to come through? Because for some of the business owners, this buyout is their retirement. So people have different reasons for wanting the block to be developed and for not wanting the block to be developed. And depending on what
Right.
side of the argument you land on, well, you're a friend or a foe of Ethan's and might be involved in his death.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's like basically, true to real life. There would be people or, pros and
Yes,
cons to both sides of it. People would be for it and some people won't be. Um, but adding murder is what we do.
yes, absolutely.
And so this is book two in your series. I was curious, like, if you have an idea for the arc
Yes.
of, yes.
Yeah, go ahead. I think I know
No,
what you're going to ask me.
it's a three book series, is that right?
So right now it's a 4 book series.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
And book three is coming out.
February 16th.
Woo! And that
Yeah,
one's called
A Fatal Habit.
Fatal Habit.
Yes, A Fatal Habit.
Cool.
Yes.
And so where will people be able to find that?
That is available at, I mean, all of the usual places that you might buy a book, online and an ebook, or paperback. So Barnes and Noble will have it, Amazon will have it. If you're in the Fox Valley area, the bookstore in Appleton will carry copies. You'll find it all sorts of places. Yeah.
Cool. Um, so do you want to talk a little bit about Fatal Habit? What happens in
Sure.
that book?
So,
Okay.
well, my original idea for a book two was to make the mystery more in AJ's neck of the woods. And so I thought, okay, what would AJ like to do? He would like to go to a Comic Con. So I thought, well, why would Bernie be at a Comic Con? That doesn't make any sense at all. But I thought, well, she could be at the same place, but not for the same reasons. So I put Bernie in Seattle, Washington to visit her best friend, Sister Eleanor Fields. And when she arrives at the hotel to meet her friend, Eleanor is missing. And of course, it has to be the same hotel. This is where the coincidence comes in. It's the same hotel that AJ is staying at. So he goes down to the lobby to pick up energy drinks and stuff for his buddies that he's staying with and finds Sister B, Bernie. She's at the desk and she is frantic with worry. And she turns around and she sees AJ and she's like, will you help me find her? And AJ agrees to. And unfortunately, they do find Eleanor, but not the way that they would like to find Eleanor. I'm not giving a whole lot away when I tell you she's dead in a parking garage, and it's pretty awful. And they can tell right away that her death was not a natural one. And the circumstances leading up to her death are very suspect because they find on hotel security that she was last seen in the hotel bar having a meeting someone for a drink. The person she meets for a drink is dressed in a Boba Fett costume.
Oh, Boba
Of
Fett has
course.
cameos in the other books too.
Yeah.
Does AJ has a little Boba like
Yeah.
bobblehead?
Yes. Yes. And so at a Comic Con, you'll find a lot of cosplayers. So this makes it really difficult because everyone is dressed up at a Comic Con. And not only that, people can change costumes at a Comic Con. You can be dressed as Boba Fett one day and somebody else, you know, a Dalek the next day, or a Viking warrior, or Superman, or Captain Marvel. You could be anybody. And so AJ is really torn. He's there to be with his buddies and have the full on Comic Con experience and meet his superheroes and, you know, get in line to get Ewan McGregor's autograph and all that kind of good stuff. But Bernie's there and her best friend has been killed and he feels responsible for making sure that this investigation goes okay. And of course, Bernie's there and she's grieving and she's at loose ends, but she's also determined to get justice for Eleanor and figure out who had a hand in this. So yeah, that's book three, which
It
I
sounds like it
actually,
was a ton of fun to write. I
oh, it
think
was
with all
so
of
much
the
fun to write.
costumes and everything, I was like, oh, you could really have fun with that.
I nerded out big time. In fact, my editor at Thule was actually like, we need to dial back for your older readers. They might be really overwhelmed by so much information. I'm like, all right, fine. So I have a considerable outtakes where I dialed back the nerdiness for readers, but it's still a lot in there.
That's great. I think it's really fun.
Thanks.
You also come up with some really good names for things. Like I love the farmers market, which is spelled like pharmaceuticals.
Yes,
Uh-huh. And other names of places. It seems like you have a lot of fun writing that and the humor too. Um, did you set out to write this as like a humorous cozy?
absolutely. Yes,
Okay.
yes. Even when I try to write serious, I can't. So there's something's just misfires in me, and I'm like, oh, had to land a joke there. So, or just like a
That's
quirky
great.
character or situation just gets kind of odd. But I love puns. I love puns. And, I was that English teacher who'd walk into class once in a while and be like, hey, kids, today this class is lit. And they'd be like, oh, like, stop, woman, but I didn't care. But I love a good pun. And that's the great thing about the cozy mysteries, especially. They
Yeah,
love a pun in the title. Readers expect that. Like, it's just joy, right?
it's hilarious. I love it. Do you have any general advice that you would say for anybody who's trying to write like comedy or funny scenes?
Oh, for sure. Well, I think the biggest piece of advice I'd ever give someone when you're trying to be funny is there's a difference between making fun of and being in on the joke. And I think if you are not in on the joke, there's a risk of the joke landing in a cruel way, in an unkind way.
Yeah.
And so I think you always have to have an understanding of respect in all humor. Otherwise, it's just cruel. You're just making fun. Sarcasm, for example. Like you can have a sarcastic line, but sarcasm, if it's too pointed, can cut
Yeah.
too deep, right? So I think that's what makes the humor between AJ and Bernie so funny is a lot of it's just based on sheer misunderstanding or too much understanding of what the other person is like. And they both know it, you
Yeah.
know, and then the other person is either exceeding expectations or not quite rising to the level of expectations. And then that builds in a lot of humor. I think as long as you're not being rude about it, like
Yeah.
I do. There's a lot of humor. I poke a lot of fun at Bernie, and she's sometimes incredibly hypocritical. And there's some good Catholic humor in there, but it's never disparaging. You know,
Yeah.
it's always just genuinely like, actually, that is pretty funny, or oh, that's a weird coincidence, or isn't that, kind of a funny way of thinking about it, a fresh perspective, but it's never mean. So I think anytime you're going to try to land a joke, you just have to explore the intent of it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I totally agree with that. I'm not good at humor, so I don't even attempt it. But I love it when people do and do it well. And you definitely have a knack for it.
Oh,
So,
thank you. Thank you.
yeah. Um, so you said that book three hits the shelves later this month, and this podcast is actually going live on the 20. I'm going to double check my calendar on the 23rd.
All right.
So it'll
Yay.
be
So the
right
book will be out.
after. Yeah, so people will be able to find it at that point. And so what's next for you?
Well, book. So it actually big exciting news. I wrote a short story featuring Sister B, Bernie, and AJ, and that is being published in Malice Domestics. Mystery Most Senior. Jacqueline Winspear is the showcase author on that anthology, and so my short story got picked up for that. It's called A Nasty Habit, and pretty excited about that. That news just came out actually this last week, so pretty
Oh,
validating.
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. And I am writing book four is written actually. It's sitting with my editor. That will come out in the fall, and that is a Christmas themed mystery featuring Bernie and AJ, bringing them back home, back to Eugene again. So I
Yeah,
flung them out far to Seattle, and I gotta rein them back in, and you know,
right.
and have a little Christmas flavored mystery there.
When we did our events together, I asked you about why you placed your books in the Seattle area. And since you are a Wisconsin author,
Yes. So Mariana was living in Eugene when she came up with the idea originally. And she was living in a place that was actually a refurbished monastery. It was senior living. And then when she got moved to memory care, her son brought her up to Portland. So that's where she currently lives. But I have an aunt who lives in Eugene. I've been there before. It's a cool town, and it's also Tracktown, USA, because they have um, the NCAA championship track and field events are hosted there every summer. It's quite a big deal. There's a lot of Olympic training happens in that area as well. And so I decided that I'd stick to Mariana's original plan and keep the story in Eugene. It is a little bit of a disadvantage for me because I do think people like reading about where they're from. And I'm from here, and people can see me here. And I have these
yeah,
books that I'm not in Eugene to sell them to people in Eugene, but my aunt says that they're pretty accurate. So I'll take her word
yeah.
for it. She's
Well,
lived
then
there
you just
quite a
have
while.
to travel there for your book events.
Exactly. And I did get to go out to the Portland area last fall because of my son's football game. So it was like, ah, here I am, guys. I write books about this place. Yeah. So it's a cool place to visit for sure. Um,
Yeah.
I but most of the time when I do write, I place my books here in my own backyard. And so I just finished a big project which is based on a fictional small town setting in Wisconsin. And that's just so much easier to write because
Yeah,
you know your own backyard better than you know someone else's.
right. Well, thank you so much for talking with me today. Would you please let our listeners know where they can find you?
Yes. So I've got this brutally long and complicated last name, thanks to my husband. But I all of the stuff can be found at www.melwestemeier.com. And the Westemeier is like singing Old MacDonald, Westemeier. So
Yeah.
melwestemeier.com.
And it's
All the good
spelled
stuff.
on your screen over there so
Okay,
people can
yes,
see
copy
it.
it off of that. So
Yeah.
melwestemeier.com.
Yeah.
And there's blog there. There's links to all the books, the descriptions, new news events, all that kind of good stuff there. And I do have a monthly newsletter as well. People can subscribe to that. Comes out at the beginning of every month. And right now, I'm actually doing a cozy mystery reader swap with a dozen, well, like 11 other mystery writers right now. So there's a free book a month right now, which is kind of fun. So get on that and you can download a book funnel every month for the whole year.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's a great deal.
I know. It's kind of fun. And I've been meeting some new writers for myself to explore. So that's a win too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, and I will definitely see you around.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tracy.